I am actually overwhelmed by this place. I think it's absolutely marvellous. It's a good place. But I am standing on a place where Dickens, more or less, Dickens stood here to perform his work 170 years ago, and that's an incredible honour. And it's good that the Sherborne is now established as a distinguished art gallery, and it's becoming a distinguished place for music to be played. But this is the start of a new adventure, because I hope we're all helping to make the Sherborne also a theatre of the spoken word. And Macready, whose house it was, would, I think, have been more keen on the theatre of the spoken word than anything else. But we mustn't forget, of course, that this beautiful building as it is, it's not the only beautiful building in Sherborne. And go down the hill a bit and you come to the Abbey. Now that's a wonderful place. And the Abbey, it was founded by the first Bishop of Sherborne, who is St. Aldhelm. And St. Aldhelm is a wonderful character. He's known as the saint and the theologian, but the thing was, he was much, much more. He was a very distinguished scientist. In the year 700 AD, he knew some natural science things, which centuries later they were discovering. But he was also a musician. He composed, he was a singer, he was a dancer, and he was a comedian. Wonderful man. He also wrote some marvellous poetry, including a series of 100 riddles and about life of the time and creatures and so on. And I thought I would start by offering you an Aldhelm riddle to guess. Mierificis formata modis in semine crescia dulcia flore foris honoro cryptoria praedis arte mea crocea flavescunt fercula regum semper acuta gro cudelia spicula pelli atque carens manibus fabrorum vinco metalla. Anyone get it? I should probably have said that Aldhelm's English poems have sadly all got lost, and only the Latin ones survive. However, just in case one or two of you missed one or two of the finer points of the Latin, I have ventured to do an English translation, and I'll ask you to guess what the riddle's about. I'm a miracle child. Mother never had intercourse. I stuff my belly full of blossoms and perfume, and enamel king's fruit bowls with fretwork of gold. My weapons are ready for war to the death, and beat this, master jeweller. I'm a metal worker with no hands. Any offers?
B? A B.
A B. He got his science right. It's actually, surprisingly, the parthenogenesis of the virgin birth is of the drones, not the workers. I checked this with London Zoo. So good old Oldham, he's got this interesting fact out of these. Somewhere in the sky, there's a door painted blue with a big brass knocker 7 feet high. If you could find it, knock and go through. That is, if you dare. You will see behind it the secrets of the universe piled on a chair like a tangle of wool. A voice will declare, you have 7 centuries in which to unwind it, but whatever you do, you must never, ever lose your temper and pull. Well, it's not a riddle, but I don't know what it means anyhow. The thing about every show one does for children is that there's always a sort of chat session afterwards. And I was just I forget where it was, but the chat session was going on okay, normally. But then suddenly, apropos of nothing, a little boy stuck his hand up rather aggressively. Why are you not a policeman? Well, I agree. I mean, it was a bit strange to be asked that. And he had absolutely no relevance. But I couldn't answer it. But I thought it made a rather nice title for our show. I did have connections with the police when I lived in Brixton at a time of the riots, because I had a copper friend who didn't pass or couldn't pass or didn't want to pass a sergeant's exam, didn't ever make any arrests. He went round and he quelled riots by cracking jokes and telling stories. He was a wonderful man. He inveigled me into a sort of police and community project, and there was some competition for children. And I was asked to rate kids' poems on crossing roads, and above all, on how well they got round the Green Cross Code. I've never discovered what the Green Cross Code is, but anyhow, it was quite fun to do. The cartoonist Barry Fantoni was looking after the posters, and we had a sort of grand person in the group, Henry Cooper, the heavyweight boxer. I'm not quite sure what he judged, but anyhow, he gave tone to our group. Somewhere in the Sky got quite nice reception. It was published in quite a number of anthologies, and it was recorded by a German company. And then I got the message that it was being invited to be part of the Hong Kong Festival of Literature. And I thought, oh, this is nice. I've never been to Hong Kong, but do I get invited to go there? And I made various kind of attempts to get myself onto the list, but alas, there was not enough money. So I have not seen Hong Kong. My poem went there. And the other Far Eastern experience was very, very much at the last minute. I was invited to write the narration for a film about the old king of Thailand, King Bhumibol, whom everyone loved. I mean, quite reasonably so. He was an extraordinary monarch. I mean, he spoke 7 languages. He was a musician. He was a scientist. And he spent his time tirelessly going round the country, getting sort of community development projects going, building better dams for rice and so on. Anyhow, it turned out that it was a BBC film, and the BBC had the principle, you must have a journalist asking questions. And this was absolutely anathema to both the director and the king. So the director plucked up courage and sacked the journalist and asked me, I was saying, I want to buy it, not a journalist. And so I got out, and the film went ahead. While we're there, can anyone tell me what the name of the capital of Thailand is?
Bangkok.
I'm terribly sorry, it's not Bangkok. Bangkok is a sort of Coca-Cola version of a vintage champagne name, because actually the capital of Thailand is called Krungtep Mahanakon Bawon Ranakosin Mahintara Yutia Mahadilok Pop. No Parat Rachatani Burir Rom Udom Rachani Wet. Mahasatana Mompiman Avatansatit Sakaktatya Wisnukam Pradit. which has been translated as Great City of Angels, Supreme Repository for the Divine Jewels, great land unconquerable, grand and prominent realm, royal and delightful capital city full of the 9 noble gems, highest royal dwelling and grand palace, divine shelter and living place for the reincarnated spirits. Well, the film was made. Bridget Winter, the director, was aware that there was probably going to be trouble because of sacking the journalist, and so she went posh, and she hired John Gielgud to read my narration, and it became a big, prestigious 3.5-hour, 2-part BBC Two. And while you can see it, if you wish, on YouTube, the much easiest version of it is to see one of the 100 pirated Thai versions. They don't have to pay for that, they just steal it. Anyhow, I was in New York, and I went to an exhibition of Ice Age art, and it was mostly sort of little figures carved in bone and antler and ivory and so on. But there was one figure, and the face was so detailed and so precise and so well made. It had to be a portrait. Now, when was the art of portraiture invented? It's usually said to be in the 4th century BC in Athens. But this Ice Age head was 28,000 BC. This is the sculptor, the carver, talking to the great chief whose portrait he is carving. Carving shadows reach out of the fire and drag the bones of your face to the surface as I scrape and gouge this reindeer horn till a twig the size of my thumb tells me, yes, I will be his head, his nose, the jut of his jaw, the set of his eyes, his face to watch as he watches himself in the dark still water before the ice smudges the pool. Wait, Lord. Huge silence struck at me then. The spiky god who fastens the white spear leaves on trees, and when the green leaves are browned and fallen, who tugs the hunter's hair from his head and withers or knots his running muscle, the spiky god is prickling the skin of my neck and trying to paint me pictures on the eyes at the back of my head. Such pictures. My thumb head of reindeer horn in the hands of strange, soft people with peeled skin, wearing strange, thin furs that are also hairless, in huts as huge as a hill, with walls of air and hundreds of suns inside them. God tells me 1,000 lives have passed. 1,000 generations have died since you and I huddled into this hut to cut off the claws of the stalking ice with little knives of orange flame and transform this twig from the head of a deer into your dear head, my Lord and Master. Now over this picture, the ice god is squeezing a taste like the muddy foretaste of Thor, pain taste of blood returning to cramped and frozen limbs, pain which is joy at the running to come, but the pain and the joy and the pictures themselves are bounding away like reindeer in flight. The pool smudges over. The twig of horn lies here in my hand, transformed to your face, and that without hairless people or walls of air, or hundreds of suns hanging down from the roof. Your face, like a twig in my hand, is miracle enough for me. Incidentally, has anyone here been to Vancouver? Yeah. Hi. Well, I hope that you went. I'm afraid my feeling about Vancouver is it is a situation for a city equal to none in the world. I mean, that it's a very beautiful place indeed, with the hills and the forest and the beautiful sea. But I'm sorry to say, I don't think the architects have lived up to that situation. And the building is actually rather dull. But there's one building that one must go to see if you're in Vancouver, and that is the Museum of the University of British Columbia, because it has a wonderful collection of poles. The trees carved with animals or mythical figures. And we're not supposed to call them totem poles, but of course it's much easier to identify if you do. This is a remarkable place. Anyhow, I was in Haida Gwaii on the lookout in a way for burial poles and so on. Now I will explain the story later. The trouble was that when the whites came to the northwest, Canada northwest, they brought smallpox with them because they were immunized, and the Native Americans had no immunity, and so a great many died. And so one of the phenomena of that area is you come across empty villages where everyone's died off of smallpox. And I was on a quest to find correct stories from that part of the world, because I had been confronted by a Trump figure who was a narcissist, a liar, a cheat, and he had conned me into writing this movie about the Native Americans, but he'd actually appropriated most of my fee for doing so himself. And he even went further, and I don't know how I let myself get caught up by him, when offering me the script of a big Hollywood blockbuster on the American Civil War, starring Robert Duvall. And he paid me for the treatment fee, small treatment fee, but he somehow collected my screenplay free. And he taught me a bit about a certain sort of American, because the movie was produced by Ted Turner, who owned CNN News Channel. And there was one moment when I was introduced to Ted Turner, and he was the typical tough guy American who shook my hand like an all-in wrestler, saying, "Any friend of Ron's is a friend of mine." And I came to realize that when an American says, "You're my friend," it's someone who he has got money out of. And of course that is Trump. And it just... it goes with the fact that there is again a certain sort of American who feels that things that have happened, all the good things have been done by Americans. And this very much comes out in movies about the Second World War, when there's a movie about finding the Enigma machine, which was of course the German code machine, very important in the war. And of course it was the British people who found it, rescued it and so on. But there's a movie about how it was discovered by an American crew. And even more, an utterly silly movie was made about the Battle of Britain, which was, according to this movie, won almost entirely by one solo pilot, played by Tom Hanks. The movie didn't last very long. So I thought that this particular trait of Americans should be celebrated in something I've called Hollywood history. God bless America, land of the free, down in dictators' largesse in liberty, even to people who don't appreciate Uncle Sam's rejig of their native state. Just as in Star Trek, when brave Captain Kirk beams down on planets and Spock gets to work with his computers, yank technology and can-do solves all problems instantly. Cowardly Japs caught Uncle Sam pants down in Pearl Harbor, bombed warships, factories, town, but Uncle Sam's production lines were speeded up till they spat out all the gear he needed, tanks, planes, guns, atom bombs, while the GIs spread out across the world, zapping bad guys. While limey airmen slunk into air raid shelters, and Messerschmitts chased Spitfires helter-skelter, the Battle of Britain was, hold your breath, won against all odds, all on his own, by one pilot, the champion Top Gun of the Yanks, Luftwaffe's scourge, squadron leader, Tom Hanks. On Yankee know-how you can put reliance. Americans are the world leaders in science. Physicists like little Mike Faraday from Ashland, Wisconsin, daring to play with Mars magnets. Poof! Electricity. Or Chuck Darwin, known for his eccentricity in Elk, Kansas, who solved the human genome studying tortoises in his kiddie tree home. Zach Newton, too, who kept an apple orchard in Kellogg, Idaho, and sometimes tortured wasps for wrecking his fruit, was once caught napping. Apple falls on his head. Zach jumps up, clapping, shouts, "Got it! Gravity! The universe powered by gravity!" His Ben told nurse smiles at him. Isaac, you're so funny. Gravity, schmavity. Will it make money? Bill Shakespeare, who used to work pumping gas in Androscoggin, Maine, hauled his ass to Hollywood, teams up with some bright fags, and runs an all-guys company for some years. Has hits on HBO, then disappears, leaves Hollywood, goes in for real estate in Stratford, England. Drinks, cokes, puts on weight, while agents cheat him of his royalties. So, though his ratings soar, his own life is a proper mess. What about Magna Carta? Without Americans, zilch, a non-starter. Sir Melda Gibson cries, "Chaps, that's not on." Frog marches in the King, whips out a pen, sign Johnny, till John signs the charter, then flees in a panic. His carriage goes splosh, tips over, drops his laundry in the wash. Handsome Sir Mel reformed the feudal system, while peasant lassies greedily French kissed him. Thus, Uncle Sam's have throughout history worked for world progress, science, liberty, above all, movies, which convey the truth and nothing but the truth to the world's youth, reminding us that there are always yet more facts to learn. By the way, don't forget how Chris Colombo, born in Omaha, by missing his way, discovered America. Thank you. During the 1990s, I was given a lot of work by the BBC as a poet, both from Radio 3, where they put on various features. I translated some Homer and Sophocles, but then there was this wonderful one I had to work on the songs of Jacques Brel. And now Brel is, for me, the greatest singer by far of the 20th century. So that was lovely. But it was also it was great because going to Paris for the brief time that the BBC allowed you to, I was able to catch up with French farce. I don't know how many people here are fans of Yves Robert. He is one of my favourite movie makers. He's a complete farce, great farce writer. His best film, I think, is called Le Grand Blonde avec la chaussure noire. The tall blonde man with one black shoe. It's a sort of spoof on smiley British Secret Service things. Lovely. And of course, there's the great Tati with his wonderful Monsieur Hulot, who I adore forever. And I found myself feeling that perhaps I should try and write a little snippet of that sort of farce. So, Le Flamand, Flamand. How unfortunate being a Frenchman. The words for Belgian and flamingo sound the same. Think of phoning your wife to say you're bringing a Belgian home this evening, someone with whom you hope to do business. Being a loving and unquestioning wife who does all she can to please and surprise you, she orders an earth mover, excavates the lawn to a pond, and then, with dreams of a miniature Serengeti in your Parisian suburb, orders a hyena cub and a white rhinoceros, so that when you get home from the office, gesticulating with your new acquaintance of Bruges on the glories of your wife's cooking, you're confronted with mountains of earth where your rosebed was yesterday, screams from your wife who shinned up the whipping willow, leaving half her shoe in the hyena's mouth while most of her dress is fluttering on the rhino's horn, and worst of all, cheese sandwich for supper. Only one sandwich at that, which, good host as you are, you give to the blasted Belgian, who, believe it or not, stands on one leg to eat it. Thank you. The Radio 4 had an extraordinary job for me. I was commissioned to create poems about current news stories, not the day's news, but the week's news. And so I gutted the Sunday papers, 4 broadsheets, 4 tabloids, went to bed in a total panic on Sunday night, and then wrote on Monday, rewrote on Tuesday, because it always takes longer to rewrite than to write, and somehow got myself to the studio on Wednesday and recorded in the afternoon. The program was called Anderson Country, and Anderson was a character called Jerry Anderson. He was a wonderful person. He was Northern Ireland. He refused to say the city where he came from because he would not say Londonderry or Derry, and so he called it Stroke City. And his conversation sort of fluttered around all over the place. I didn't quite know what he was going to say, but it was wonderful working with him. And also, it was the BBC bosses were frightened of the idea of poetry coming out of the poetry ghetto and actually coming into an ordinary radio programme. So I felt it was necessary, and I think I was right in that, to do a comic poem first and then do something much more serious. Anyhow, I thought I would offer you the poem that I broadcast in the first of that series. It went on, as I say, went on for well over 5 years altogether. And this is called Cantando Gregoriano, and it's about a Spanish monastery in the remote Pyrenees where there was no transport, and the monks had been there for 1,000 years or so, and some smartass came to stay there and pressed the record button on his tape, and this ancient plain song became smash hit and flooded the air, flooded the airwaves, and of course obviously left the monastery being invaded by tourists and all sorts of things like that. Silence herself has taken this song, filtered through centuries of stone like purest water, to be her own. Here, where monks make a prayer so strong, they draw our business into their prayer, guarding each hour of worker days with a special penitence and praise and intercession until their stalactite steady drip of chant, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext and nones, vespers, complin, grows into the bones of a holy dragon whose energy can't be choked by city traffic fumes or driven to stroke or heart attack by office stress, but just breathes back pure air from these ancient pure tunes, ancient when England was still forest, into our clogged and choking lungs. The city's dry and blackened tongues pant for this chant, longing for rest. Some smartass came to the monastery, stayed for a few days drinking peace from this chant which seemed not to cease, merely to merge with eternity. Without thinking, he pressed record, captured their timeless song on tape. Smash, boffo, and amen, gape. It topped the charts, beat Elton, bored housewives was up to it. Salesmen painted their Sierras, cops hum it, drug dealers making drops whistle it through the teeth. The amen in the Dorian mode, wings through airports, breathes on lunch counters, radio broadcasts it hourly, joggers glow Gregorianly in their lycra shorts with Walkmans full of monks. The abbey, far in remote mountains, far, far from the road, is mobbed like a movie star. Buses are jammed on paths, and flabby tourists with camcorders ooze litter. The village mayor, in a baseball cap, gushes PR like turning a tap. He owns the hotel. The peasants are bitter. The mayor intends to ban their beasts from the tiny village's market square. The tourists won't want dung on their loafers. No cows, no goats. The priests, singing their daily offices as they have done for 1,000 years, trip on ice cream cones, cans of beer, hot dog stands. When one rises to bless his congregation, he's click, click, filmed, jostled for autographs. The monks wander dismayed, stumble like drunks, as their prayer stream is overwhelmed by gushing tourist effluent. Perhaps one old monk will, however, murmur to his brother monks, "Our river of prayer and song still rose to its end in heaven's ocean. Fashions will change. A new hit record will soon be found. Baboon shrieks, maybe, or the sound of fetal heartbeat. Anything strange to tickle the fickle, make money, and then trickle away forgotten as if it had never been. Life is a leaf blown from a tree, songs mightier. When our record's forgotten, tourism bust, monks will sing as they've always sung for centuries, whether goat dung or Coke cans lie here gathering dust. I had another wonderful present, it was, from the news one week, when the news read, John Betjeman's grandson David was, while driving from London to his home in Compton Beecham, Oxfordshire, was caught by the police, caught driving under the influence of ecstasy, banned driving for a year and fined £160. And I wondered what John Betjeman, had he been alive, would have thought about that. Oh, why did you not buy a season ticket at Baker Street or perhaps Marylebone, then lean back to enjoy a glimpse of cricket on Wilson Green, or at Ruislip, the stone of St. Elfrida's spire, circa 1840, architect James Grant. Why were you so naughty? Oh, why, when there are railways which could take you out through Middlesex and Bucks to Oxon, when you could snooze, or if you stayed awake, watch a 8 on the river with a coxswain christened Mivanwe, but with thighs like wire and shoulder muscles to evoke desire. Oh, why, when you had tempted at that disco, succumbed to taste chemical ecstasy? Neither Joan Hunter Dunn nor Pam would risk so easy a means to touch the infinity of love, I can assure you. Why did you not travel by train, as wise people do? Oh, I know well the lure of a Cortina, a Triumph Herald, or an Aston Martin, an open sports car, where rum and Ribena might tempt a dead's delight to lay his heart in adoration at the feet of some goddess, hoping that lust like his lurks neath her bodice. But grandson David, this has led to shame, a tough fine and banned driving for a year. I'm awfully sorry, and I'll take some blame because I've pooped off and am no longer here. Do grandsons listen to what granddads might teach them? Do any trains still stop at Compton Beecham? Thank you. I did sometimes write poems for the Today programme, and one time I was instructed to go to Blackpool for the 1998 Labour Party conference just after the Blair victory. And I went up on the West Coast train, which was a very bad railway at the time, and it kept breaking down, and all the Labour Party bigwigs were on the train too, and we wondered whether we would get into the conference auditorium for Blair's speech. The bigwigs just did it, and I sort of trailed in just as Blair was mounting the platform. And there was music, but the strange thing was that the music was Zulu choir singing. And I managed to pick out Siyahamba, Okanye, Nkulu. We are walking, we are marching, Ukani, light, and Nkulu, God. And we are marching in the light of God. Now, why that was put on for Blair taking the podium, I have no idea. I couldn't find anyone in the whole gathering who might have understood what the Zulu was meaning. But I did come a bit to haunt me when in my opinion, Blair made a disastrous judgment of joining Bush in invading Iraq. Anyhow, so my second homeland is KwaZulu, South Africa. I was born there. My dad was an Anglican priest who was elected bishop by the Zulus to the consternation of the whites. And he was actually ousted from his diocese, and the Zulus would say he was ousted by the white archdeacons, who were apparently the villains. And when I first went back, I was met with huge love, respect, entertainment, fun by all the Zulus, some of whom were living in incredibly bad conditions. I was there in the height of apartheid, when that vicious, vile Group Areas Act had been passed, and Zulus were kicked out of their land and to go into a black area. And there was one case where I went to a resettlement town, so-called. It looked like a concentration camp with barbed wire around it. It was arid country. There was no way of growing gardens or let alone running cattle. And the houses were placed in strict rows, but it meant that, of course, each house was told to dig 2 holes, one for water and one for latrine. But of course it meant that house there, water, latrine, house there, water, latrine, and of course the typhoid spread out. It was a terrible time. And I found myself writing a kind of piece of black comedy about this. When families complained of the living boxes provided, the minister in charge replied that it was unnatural for Bantu, Abo, tribal Indians, native people in general, to stand upright in houses, much less to walk around. Very inactive, these people, he said, spend their time squatting on their rumpsteak, staring out into space. When asked about water, he said, water? They don't need water. That's their secret. They can go without water or food for days, just suck their own lips for the natural moisture. When starving babies began to die, he drew our attention to the marvelous process of natural selection. That's why they're such a healthy race, he said. Survival of the fittest. I tell you, my friends, that compared with them, we're at a real disadvantage. I was, probably one of the greatest honours of my life was, in fact, I think you said, sure, it's the greatest honour. I was invited to perform some poems at a festival, Zulu festival. It was a Pentecost festival, and the morning was a Zulu mass. Well, of course, the Zulu masses go on rather longer than you normally expect because there's such a lot of dancing. And so you'd expect 3 or 4 hours of the mass in the morning, and then the afternoon was party, but there was a demonstration of Zulu warrior dancing. And I was asked if I would provide an interlude between the two. And it was interesting, that poem, Living Boxes, I performed it at a sort of rehearsal in front of the Zulus. It was greeted with howls of laughter. They saw the black comedy. They were quite uncontrollable about it. I have a visual memory of one fat archdeacon, bless him. He was sort of rolling around, and when Zulus laugh, they laugh with their whole body. So it was a wonderful sight. But then I was then taken aside by the organizer and said, I don't think you should perform that poem at Kwanzimela, was the place, because there'll be a lot of security police, and you, Leo, might get into trouble. They're not bothering about them getting into trouble because they learned how to deal with the security police. But so it was, as I say, I was led to the little stage in front of an open air amphitheatre and 4,000 Zulus. That was the time. The other poem I wanted to do was just something to say thank you for the incredible hospitality, the warmth, the laughter and so on that I got shown. I mean, I wasn't like the good people going out and curing diseases and so on. I was just wandering around to see what Zulu, the place where I was born, was like. As I say, I think it's beyond words. But I did try and say thank you. The Zulu language, in the Zulu language, the word Zulu means heaven. So I call this people of heaven. You who have called me friend, welcomed me into your house, laid bread and tea before me, offered a bed for the night under a lightning-cracked sky, possess 1/4 of what, according to experts, is necessary to achieve a minimum subsistence standard of living in poverty. 1/4 of basic existence, 1/4 each slice of bread, 1/4 each dip of marge, 1/4 each spoonful of tea, 1/4 each bar of soap. Yet you gave me a clean towel, soap and a bowl of water carried for 1/2 mile on your head uphill from the river, and you put clean sheets on the bed. How much is that bread and marge, the cups of tea which I drank, the soap on my face and hands, the cleanness of sheets and towel, taken away from your children in mealy porridge unbought, in extra hunger dullness? How much have you given to me at risk of your own life? You have called me your friend. But this morning I've eaten a breakfast of eggs and bacon. I had steak and salad for dinner with 1/2 a bottle of wine, my clothes, my books, my car, my house, my airline tickets. How can I ever dare to accept such a title, your friend? For you stand at the gates of heaven with laughter and songs all round you like angel barriers of flame. And yet you sing to me, join us. All that you have to do to be part of our songs and laughter is come and take our hand. Then your fingertips draw me easily through the flames into such abundant joy that I have nothing to answer. I think we should now return to St. Aldhelm. There's another of these riddles. It's a little bit harder to guess, I think. My feet walking on water, but I have no dread at all of drowning. I don't go boating or frolic in fast-flowing rivers. I avoid crossing bridges, but I can walk dry-footed across a calm lake. Any offers for that?
Water boatman.
A water boatman. A water boatman. Well done. Or pond skater. They have many names. Well, that's very good. I thought that would be a hard one to get, but no, that's great. The Aldhelm is very fond of water boatmen or pond striders or whatever you like to call them. They've got many names. He obviously, they appear a lot of times in his poems. And in it, Aldhelm was actually, he was very interested in insects. As I said, I think he's somebody who sort of has a bit the mind of the child. And I think probably when we were kids, we were all sort of quite interested in little beetles going up and so on. So I thought of a sort of Aldhelm fantasy. How many people have been in New York? Quite a few. Now, have you actually had the New York experience of pulling up a large piece of furniture, and suddenly you see the cockroaches, the hundreds of cockroaches charging at you, the onset of cockroaches. So I had this fantasy of, could I take Oldhelm to a New York apartment and lift up a chest, and out come the cockroaches. At cockcrow, cockroaches encroach on my breeches. One reaches like leeches from my features and scratches. One slouches like gauchos with guns in their pouches. Some sneak in like poachers. Some come in coaches shouting meal vouchers. Then all kinds of creatures attack like Apaches, revivalist preachers, or ad-men from Saatchi and Saatchis. I succumb to the clutches of these miniature niches who grand national leap at my face like the ditches and hedges of beeches till everything itches. I grab my matches, my Benson and Hedges, glassfuls of teachers, and crouch like hamsters in hutches, frozen dinners in fridges, or puffins on ledges, till I'm wedged in the sheds of grouches and ouches. Help! Here come the midges. And to finish, I would like to share with you a little composition entitled My Mummy. One mild Monday morning in May, our milkman was mentioning how you could make mouth-watering meringue from a mixture of mutton, marmalade, and mulligatawny soup. When Mike met us on his moped with a message that mouldering in the motel, which had once been a millionaire's magnificent manor house with marble mullions, mosaics, and a minstrel's gallery, was a mummy in a moth-eaten morning suit of mauve moleskin. Our milkman moonlights as a magician. I'm miserable, he moped. My macaw's molting, my monkey's missed on the mosaics, and I've had to mortgage my melodeon. Why is the membership mean to me? Meanwhile, the mummy made a movement. It moved more. It moved even more. It minced up the motorway to a Mozart minuet on a musical box. We'll be martyred, we moaned as we mashed against the mummy. Mike with a musket from the museum, Marjorie with a mousetrap, and Megan with her mincer. Major MacDonald, a monocle mountaineer from the Isle of Muck, marshalled us. Method, Mike. Military method. Are you a marksman? Were you in the Marines? No, Major. I'm a marshmallow. The mummy meandered towards us murderously. Its muscles were as mighty as a mammoth's. Its molars were masticating a muesli of millet, mandrake, marginal members of parliament, moving motions. What a masculine, masterful mummy, mused Megan. He's a match for the Major. Mummy offered to mend the mummy's mackintosh. The mummy mooched towards Mummy and menaced her. Mummy was mystified. Why the morning suit? Is it going to be married? Don't meddle with Mummy, mumbled Mike in a monotone. The mummy was miffed. It molested Mike's mongrel and the milkman's monkey. Some muck-up in the Morse code, minuted the Major, manufacturing motor bombs. An MC with a microphone, masterminding a magical mystery tour on a monorail, mimicked Mummy, but mercifully was mugged by a Methodist minister who'd been meditating in a Mercedes 1 metre from the monorail. The magician milkman measured out, masquerading as a maniacal monk, memeing medieval melodies in the Mixolydian mode, measured out a microgram of mouse droppings, a milliliter of mayonnaise, and a microscopically minute Mars bar. Mama, he murmured, meaning to say I am more marvellous than Merlin, but missing out most of it. Then he melted the metal of the monorail, merged it with the mirage of the motorway, while moulding the metal into Malteser missiles. Just at the moment, Major MacDonald, munching meat pie and mustard, mulled his boat about in the boat of the motel. Massacre the malingering malevolence, mewed Megan. Metamorphose it to manure. But the Major's mission misfired. He missed with his mortar bomb and mangled the motel into a mound of mud and matchsticks, while the mummy migrated to Margate for midsummer. Thank you. Thank you.